So in my normal everyday life, I go by the title of either customer strategy, customer or voter engagement strategist. So basically what that means is I really focus on results, especially coming out of the corporate world. You know, they're always looking at the bottom line. So I'm always results driven, and I use a lot of data. So it probably drives a lot of my friends crazy that I don't run on anecdote, and they're like, Emma, I'm like, where'd you find that information? It's incredible. Dave is one of my friends. So one of the things I always like to do is get to the root of issues, and also I focus a lot on the actual people. And so I do a lot of work with demography, but I really look at how people are impacted or how to move them into action. And the one thing I really like about what I do is I get to talk to all different types of people. And I literally have to park with my biases, my prejudices, and listen to them deeply and empathetically, whether I agree with their positions or not. Because my job is not to necessarily make a decision, it's actually to figure out who we can influence to do something or move to action for our issues, causes, or if it's a company for, you know, products and services. So I've even I'm probably one of the few people here who has targeted on voters in the middle of the state who don't look like most people in this room, and getting them actually to call their legislators about Medicaid expansion in 2013, and we were actually very successful because I really try to figure out where people come from and what language kind of influences them. So for the DA's race, I was just like, I'm not doing any more campaigns. The ruling, the politics, the isms around, you know, being a woman who does data, which is, you know, if you're African American and you do data work in the progressive space, you're like a unicorn. So I was just like, I'm done, not doing it. So I just started doing research in the DA's race for my own edification, and it seemed like there was a new candidate every other week. And so I just did a spreadsheet side by side looking at everybody, and I realized I really didn't understand the issues all that well. And you know, I think of myself as a pretty savvy voter, but I really did not understand what was happening. So I first started with the newspapers like most people, and they do Google, and you know, and then I started calling around for data. So calling the prison system, looking at arrest records on the state site. I mean, literally, like, you were like, who are you and why should I give you this information? I'm like, I'm a citizen and I'm trying to educate voters. And then they started giving it to me, and that turned into My Family Votes. And My Family Votes is like a pop-up organization, and a lot of us are consultants. We've worked in either political space, corporate space, nonprofit space, and majority African Americans. And we come together, we came together in 2008, we came together this year virtually, just to start educating the African American community about the DA's race. So my usual detachment kind of went out the window. Once I started looking at the data, I would move from extreme sadness to just out and outright rage. I've never looked at data and just felt such an emotional hit viscerally, particularly because I know I'm a voter, and that means that not only the DA, but all the mayors, and I've been voting in Philly since God was a boy. So I know that I have been helping to select people who are actually implementing policies that are working against our own citizens. So the thing that hit me the most, in which I was just deeply saddened, was that Philadelphia has the highest rate of incarceration among all large jurisdictions. And we're talking LA, New York. And these are the numbers I picked off of the MacArthur Foundation, and they actually granted the city a $3.5 million grant. This is not a pretty prize. This means you have serious problems and we're trying to help you fix them. And the city met with another $2 million to help with our problem. The one thing that 70% of people sitting in Philadelphia, 72% awaiting trial are black. and 60% are low-level offenses, and they're waiting trial, which means they haven't been convicted of anything. They're just kind of sitting there. So the one thing, and they're predominantly black men, 18 to 64. Black men in Philly are only 12% of our population. So that's a pretty, stunning statistic. And as you start digging into data, you see how all the tentacles match up. How stop and frisk numbers are just out of control as far as African Americans being stopped 70% of the time versus everyone else. And 70% of the stops are African Americans. And if you're in a neighborhood where there are fewer African Americans, the stop rate goes up astronomically. So civil asset forfeiture, and I'm just kind of mentioning things that the candidates are running on. It's basically, it sounds really it's tough stuff, but it was built around if you looked like you were committing a crime, like they stopped you, you had 2 kilos of drugs in your car, guns, money, and they could stop and take it. Well, that makes sense, it's going to be in a commission of a crime. But what's happening is it's used to take small amounts of money from people, like under $200 on average. And then cash bail, where we have a 95-day wait time for trial. It's one of the highest in the country. And if you don't have cash, there have been people who've been who have sat in the Northeast in jail for 2 years waiting for trial because their families couldn't come up with $2,000. So you can imagine what happens to your life when you call your boss and you're like, I'm innocent, but I'm in jail and I would like you to hold my job. It doesn't matter whether you're a PhD or you're a high school graduate, your job's probably going to go. So all these things are contributing to our mass incarceration syndrome here, and they're all wrapping around each other. And the one thing that it's obvious that there is a thumb on the scale of the justice scale in Philadelphia. And what happens when you look at the scale and you put your thumb on things, the other parts like victims' rights, solving really tough murder cases, that's real. That kind of, when they're really focusing on this low level, basically low hanging fruit. Then I got that from the article. I didn't say that. And so there are very serious issues. And when you hear a lot of candidates speaking, they are talking about we need better education systems and we need better economic opportunity and all these factors that are contributing to our high numbers. And I'm not disputing that that's important, but when the system is part of the problem, the data is just not lying about that. It's just so skewed toward black and brown people, and basically the system is feeding itself, and we just can't have that anymore. And so the one thing about Pennsylvania, and this is I'm gonna kind of toss it to my colleagues here, is Pennsylvania spends $2.4 billion locking up folks every year. So a third of all the state prisoners come from Philly. So we're like a major pipeline. So I have a question for you guys. So given that $2.4 billion our state is spending, but there's all this other money that comes in from clothing for prisoners, food for prisoners, the fact that prisoners, toilet paper, all these things are that the powers that be, they're making money, and we're not the only state, but we are like the poster child for mass incarceration. Do you think that come January 21st, when the inauguration happens for the next DA, that those groups are just going to lay down and just roll? No. So one of the things as voters is I hear a lot of times that people say, we don't have any power. So the one thing that we can do, and the reason why November 7th is so important, is that if we start treating voting as a step and not a destination, which a lot of people do, once they vote, they just roll off, is that we can start to move as an informed force. And basically, we have to look at the results in between the 4 years of running We have to stay on the canvas, whether we actually back them, didn't back them, we still have to abide by whatever the policies they're rolling out. And the DA is the major gatekeeper. They don't make policies around how the police perform, and they don't make policies about where money's going to funnel, about jobs and things like that. But they actually can make a decision on one given minute about whether somebody's going to start down the criminal justice path or they're not. So that's why they're so critical. And also, we can actually form a shield around once whomever gets into office as DA, and that the people have spoken, and the fact that the mayor and city council have to be involved in a lot of decisions. And if they know that active voters are watching and actively participating, you'll see a lot more change. But if, like I said, if we all do this, we're all just going to get, I mean, even if, you know, a marvelous candidate or whomever gets in, if we're not behind them and everything goes behind the walls and small meetings and closed doors, we're probably not going to see a lot of change. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my job was to set up. So, you know, I do a little speech. So that was my job. So I just let it, you know. So today, so we're going to have like a conversation because we all have different, we're all coming from different places, right? So we're not all the same voter. So if I mention any issues that you're not familiar with or you'd like to talk more about, raise your hand. We can talk more about cash bail, stop and frisk, and victims' rights, which I think have been woefully
Ignored. It's been ignored.
Yes, it's been ignored, basically. And so I'm so glad to see you because I haven't seen really too many victims' rights people on the trail, and I've been on the trail for a long time. So I have questions for you too. So, so if you guys have any immediate questions, and then we can. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to, you know, right. My name is Dave Lipstone, and what I am is a citizen activist. You know, and I consider myself that because I'm just one person. I'm not really attached to any organization. Now, I do have 2 websites, and I haven't put them up yet. It's phillypolitics.com.org, and I bought them about 17 years ago. You know, but I really haven't had a chance to really bring them online because there's a lot that goes into that. And whatever I bring online, I want to make sure that it really is truthful and effective. But in the meantime, you know, giving a little background on my background, is that I've been active, you know, been an activist since I was a kid. I think in 3rd grade I started. There was a little girl, her name was Dolores Ringgold, she had glasses on. And one time something happened in the classroom, she started crying. And her little glasses fogged up. In the classroom, just, you know, poor kids, they're gonna laugh. And me being the protector, I'm like, no, don't laugh. So from that point on, you know, you go to college, you go to Temple, not Temple, I think it was Temple, you go to Community College in Philadelphia. And I remember going there were so many different issues. I became a columnist, you know, and we talked about different issues that were happening and how people were just rude to the students. And how dare you be rude to a student? I'm paying my money. I went to Temple for a couple, did something to them. I'm saying, people are so nice. Like, hello, sir, how are you? And I go back to Temple, community college, they're like, what do you want? So, in my thing, you know, I start writing my articles about that. And I start saying, okay, people have to be treated right. Yeah. So we had tuition, tuition, we're dealing with financial aid. The person wanted to beat me up, the director. I wrote this article, you know, but it was so effective. It was so effective that I was so effective that the college president and a couple of vice presidents gave me my wedding. So, hey, I must have been doing something right. And then we move on to corporate America. Get to corporate America, I'm in this business unit. And what happens is, all the other business units have tuition reimbursement, but ours doesn't. I'm like, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, Fortune 100 company. And I'm saying, what is going on here? So, you know, me, activist, I get up there and I say, okay, why don't we have it? And working with upper management, we actually got it. Okay, now coming back to the Philadelphia being an activist, being a block captain, learning about the different things that happen on our block. Now I'm in Southwest Philadelphia, so I have a lot of returning citizens sometimes coming in and dealing with them, getting a block together. We had trees, I worked with the community, we had trees put all around and all kind of stuff. Working with people so that we can get, have an agreement. And it really was a working relationship. Moving out to a condominium association, became the president. We're having issues there. And I just, you get to the issues. But I mean, and then also my career is IT. We get to the root cause of the situation. Okay? So that is part of what I do. Now I see getting fast forward. What happens is we have police issues. People getting killed, people getting beat up. And we're saying, as a citizen, why are these people fired? If they're working anywhere else, they would be gone. But every time something happens is arbitration. Next thing I know, they're back on the job. They get their money back. They had a year off vacation. And I was talking to Leland. I was talking to Leland. I said, these people get a vacation and then also opportunity cost. And I said, this is costing the city of Philadelphia too much money. What is the root cause of this? How do these people stay in their jobs? And that was one of the things that back in 2015, when the mayor's race started, I got in, I started talking to the mayor, and said, are you going to do something about this? I talked to the commissioner, are you going to? This is just citizen activist, just a citizen, no organization. Got a chance to talk to him, got a chance to talk to but Councilman Curtis Jones. He's on the public safety. Those are the things I've done. And we really want to talk about that. You know, what are some of the things that we as citizens of Philadelphia, in conjunction with the DA, in conjunction with the judge, in conjunction with the mayor and city council, what can we do to bring this? Because we do have a lot of good cops. We do. But you have those bad apples that are really putting the lives of good cops in jail. And they have done that. So that's, that's part of the conversation I want to have today. In conjunction with what she's saying, in conjunction with what you're saying, we can all come together and then we can spread that word out of how we as Philadelphia citizens can come together and solve this issue together.
That's to follow. Just a little bit about who I am and then the work that I'm doing, and I guess open to any kind of questions. My name is Allison Sprague. I am the Executive Director of Victim and Witness Services of South Philadelphia. I call it BWSSP. That's what I'm talking about. We've been around since 1989, and we're one of the 7 community-based organizations that work with victims of what the feds call other serious crimes. So crimes other than sexual violence and domestic violence. So just so you know sort of who our folks are.
Are you a COA?
Excuse me?
Are you a COA?
No, we're not a CUA. That's that would be for child abuse of the DHS community base. So we're working with anything from a purse snatching to a homicide with folks in South Philly, and so there are organizations in each part of the city. So in the name of full disclosure, we are funded, among other people, by the DA's office to provide services in court. So that's part of our relationship with the district attorney's office. But having said that, we are an independent nonprofit agency. Our biggest funder is VOCA funding. So I mean, I'm really interested to be here. I don't see there as being a lot of conflict in all the things I heard you say. I think that the people that we're serving are the people who are most impacted by crime in Philadelphia are young people of color, and specifically young men of color. So it's really the same populations that we're all talking about. And I think that what we know from national data is that over half of victims do not choose to participate in the criminal justice process. So right from the top, we know that it's not working for a lot of people. They don't believe there's enough in it for them to even bother to participate. Okay, so we have a huge set of folks who are hard to identify, who are not going to get access to a lot of services because they aren't identified in traditional sort of methods, and who are very much in need of service. And then you have the people who do participate. And what we know about them is they are equally dissatisfied with the criminal justice process, which is incarcerating people at a record rate. And so you have sort of opposing people in this system, none of whom are feeling satisfied by the process. What we know that victims want, because there is data, is accountability. And interestingly, not just victims of property crimes or things that people describe as less serious crimes, all the way up to homicide, surviving members of families, family members, or co-victims of homicide. Overwhelmingly, prefer some level of accountability versus just incarceration. And this goes across demographics, this goes across political parties, interestingly. When you survey victims, that's the data that comes back. So I think it's a really exciting time with this new DA race. I haven't been able to have these conversations in so long because we've been so sort of in the weeds of just trying to provide services in what has felt like a pretty hostile criminal justice process for victim citizens.
Yeah.
And so it is exciting, and we are a 501c3 and do not support any candidate over the other, but it's exciting that these kinds of conversations are starting to happen more and to see that there is, I think there is a huge amount of, it's just hugely important that we resolve this for everyone. The one other group of folks I did just want to specifically bring into the conversation would be to just talk about, because we're in South Philly, we're working with a huge number of immigrant crime victims and limited English proficient crime victims. And so along with mass incarceration, along with the massive expansion of the prison system, we're also seeing the huge increase in detention centers. And with the same toilet paper buying, feeding, all the businesses that surround that. And so it's a population that we, who is also clearly in massive amounts of fear because of the threats of deportation. So that would be the other group I would just want to sort of bring into the conversation as folks that we're working with and that we have concerns about, and that I think is helpful. And who are also disproportionately impacted by victimization.
So before we open it up to the floor, so I have a question for you too, but it's on a different side. So as far as victimization, you said that half don't choose to participate. And one of the issues that did pop up once in one of the DA forums was about the solve rates for murderers, and that's very, very low. Do you see that as a lack of resources on the part of the criminal justice system, or are there other factors that are feeding into that?
It's complicated, right? It's a lot of things. I don't think that, especially the homicide detectives, I don't think they're lazy or anything. They're working their butts off. They're sort of the elite of the elite. They care. But yeah, I think there is a resource problem. The resources there. But yeah, I think, community members are ambivalent about participating and what risks there are, and whether the risks outweigh the benefits of participation. I always sort of say, if I wouldn't recommend my daughter testify, we're not going to be telling a victim what they should do. So how we support victims, how much we listen to what outcomes they want. What victims want is safety. That's like the number one thing the victims want, and that's not just my opinion. That's national survey data. It certainly is borne out by the conversations that we have with victims. And if an incarceration and a trial to get to that point does not feel to a lot of people like that's going to be a successful road. So I don't think the answers.
Because I was going to say, I think it appears more in lower income areas where people can't afford to move. They have to stay in their neighborhood. So when you said safety, it's easier to say that maybe South Philly versus Chestnut Hill, or versus you're in a much better phrase that. You're in a group of people who will, I think about a certain thing. They have enough money, they have enough clout, they can talk about those things. If something should happen, they can afford the protection. Where someone someone who maybe might be lower income can't afford that, and then they're stuck, and then their kids have to go to school, get murdered. I mean, this has actually happened to people getting murdered. They'll call from prison, hey, I need to do such and such and such and such. The person's taken care of, being murdered, and there's nothing happened. So you are actually correct when it comes to that. I do definitely agree with that.
Now, there is money available for relocation, just so that people
How much?
know. And there's reimbursement, and I agree, but I feel like I need to at least put it out there so that word does get out there. There's money, there's not witness relocation like you see on TV, unless you're not given a new identity. From South Philly to Southwest or South to North or many of those combinations. And I do think economic factors play in, and it's also just who wants to move, you know? I mean, it's like your life, it's your neighborhood, and not only are you supposed to move, you're not supposed to have contact with. It's just not, and the people who most are likely to participate for those sort of justice reasons, or they're not going to be driven out, are the ones who are most not going to want to be driven out. So it's tough, and you're not taking everybody you love out, you know. So you leave, but your mother's there, or your grandmother's there, your nephew's there, and your nephew goes to school with. I mean, the solutions to me are the same as the problems, right? It's like looking at community fabric and how you strengthen that, and how you have criminal justice processes be responsive to that kind of.
So I have one more question for you, and then just open it up. One issue that came up in one of the forums was about juvenile lifers. So Pennsylvania has, unfortunately, again, we're leading in too many bad categories. We have a high number of people who were convicted as minors. And the Supreme Court ruled that basically because of brain development, decision making, that's unconstitutional. Well, for a lot of those people, they're still sitting there. So I noticed that there were some people who had family members were the victims of some of those people, and they wanted them to stay in there until they died. So they call it death by incarceration. And yet others who are on the other side say that they need a new day in court. So what say you to?
Yeah, I mean, so there are, I have personal views, right, and then I have organizational views, and but then when I look at sort of what the data says about victims, I mean, I think that victims get sort of like carted out, just like all of us do in different roles, right? And so you can always find people who are going to take one position or the other. Again, I think that the data says that victims want safety, they want real accountability. That means not just like saying sorry, like having substantial process of accountability. I think that from a victim advocate position, the juvenile lifer issue is really tough for people who are already sentenced, for families who have, there is no such thing as closure in a homicide, okay? But for people who have as much criminal justice system closure, ending as they can, to then reopen that entire process is very difficult. So I don't think it's inconsistent to say, that I personally believe that there should be resentencing, and I don't believe that juveniles should be incarcerated for life. But I do think that by setting this up as victims want this, and that we don't address some really real needs of families who have had their loved ones murdered by a juvenile, and so really putting in significant amounts of funding to support advocacy for those families to get all the services they need to reopen and go through this incredibly traumatic process, and not allowing the discussion to be polarized into, the bad victims who want kids locked up forever, or the bad kids who did this horrible thing and then they're characterized so horribly too. I think anything we can do to stop those polarities is, going to advance the argument in a much more sustainable way. So.
I definitely agree. There has to be a balance between the two when it comes to, because if you're a victim, my grandfather was murdered. So, and he was murdered before I was born. And he was a businessman. And the issue comes in is, you have a person that was murdered by even 16 or 17. The act still occurred. And at that particular time, the jury decided that we're going to give this person life. So it really is a touching subject, a sensitive subject, because you do want, sometimes juveniles, we don't know what the situation might have been. Why somebody? So I think it should be done on a case-by-case basis. Because, if someone was raping someone and they killed them, like there was a gentleman that was, there was guys who molested him and he killed him, he went to jail, he was trying to get out. Well, there's more understanding in that. But if you're career criminal from the time you were 12 years old and you end up hurting somebody, then unfortunately that person's never going to come back. Whereas this person goes on with life. So it really is a sensitive situation that really I think has to be handled on a case by case basis. because some people are just incorrigible. I'll just say it like that. Until you're a victim of that type of crime, you really don't know the impact it has on a family. It really changes the trajectory of that family. And people really don't understand that. So it's something that, like I said, a case-by-case basis. I don't think it should be a blanket, but I think a case-by-case basis.
So I'm going to throw something out that's kind of provocative, which is a topic that a lot of the candidates were either like waffling on, like they started in one place and by the end they all sounded the same, and that's the death penalty. So I'm in an interesting position that my brother, he actually went to prison for 5 years for a felony drug charge. And then 8 years later, he went back into the prison system as a corrections officer. And he worked his way all the way up to one of the highest ranks in the prison system, to the point that he actually supervised 2 out of the last 3 executions. So I talked to him yesterday about it, and I was just like, well, what do you feel about the death penalty? And he's like, I don't feel anything. And he was just like, I did my job. So one of the candidates is basically saying, also because we're bipartisan, one candidate is pro-death penalty, the other is anti-death penalty. And I would like to hear what other people think about the death penalty. It's like a subject that people don't want to talk about. I mean, it's like it's actually one of like the top topics that these candidates are running on. So what's your name?
Lindy Lee.
Lindy Lee.
First of all, thank you all for being here. It's such a pleasure to hear your thoughts. And this is something I actually just spoke with my best friend about. Just for some background, my best friend is someone who's been with me for 9 years, has never spoken an ill word about anybody. So I take his opinion very seriously. And I'm running for Congress, I'm very politically engaged, and he is as well. He's at Yale Law School right now. On Monday, I made a surprise trip to New Haven, 8 hours in total traveling, and I asked him, what do you think of the death penalty? Again, light coffee talk. But he was saying how he's against even instituting the death penalty against Joe Carcinio, the Boston Marathon bomber. And I said, how could you possibly say this? As someone who's an immigrant to America, anyone who wants to harm our country, it's like you throw a dagger into my heart. How dare you harm America? But then he's like, I fundamentally believe in the radical equality of humanity. And, why would we do something so atrocious and so inhumane? And I say, why not talk about the financial aspect of it? And he's like, don't you realize that the appeals on top of the appeals are much more expensive? And it's such a fascinating topic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And I'd love to say that I'm 100% against the death penalty. I'm still moving, and my thoughts are evolving on it. But for someone who
The Boston bomber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For someone like him, really? What are your thoughts? I know we haven't had a Philadelphia example of that, but thankfully. But what do you think?
I'll go. I wouldn't say very anti-death penalty, but I am against the death penalty. And it's simply because if you could ensure to me that the person you're putting to death is guilty, I would be for it. But there's enough instances where you kill an innocent person, but then it's more a retributory act. So there's no way for us to ensure that this person is 100% guilty. And killing them is like you killed them 100%. So
Yeah.
I can't be for that. Personally, if you could prove to me, if you always got the person that's murdered the person, then that would be different. But there's been enough instances where you find out, oh, this person was participated, but they weren't directly the person that did it, or DNA says that they didn't do it at all. This witness said it, and now we have all this sophisticated thing that says they're innocent. It's more of a, this is basically a crime against these people.
What about someone who confessed himself? And I'm thinking specifically of the bomber. He gladly owns it. He's not remorseful at all.
Mhm.
And I'm actually 100% with you. I agree with everything you said. I'm just, for that particular instance, he doesn't care. He just hates America and just wants to destroy human life.
Yeah, but there's always going to be a situation where they'll get a confession for somebody that doesn't quite understand the circumstances. They might have done it, they might not have done it. You're giving it too much certainty. He did it, like Dylan Roof, he did it. He's not remorseful. He's eligible for the death penalty. He, I would say, deserves the death penalty, but there are other people. There's too much uncertainty, so we can't be that certain about it.
He's a human being too, though. I said he's a human being too, though.
Yeah, besides that, I mean, I love human beings to a certain extent. But even
To a certain extent.
we also like euthanize animals that we can't rehabilitate.
Yeah.
And we're certain, there's a degree of certainty that we do not have with the death penalty.
I'm in agreement with you, Zenobia, in that to make it, say, a state law, to enforce it in the state. There are enough, now we know, especially more so than ever, that there have been people wrongly convicted. And we have so much, all these, the Innocent Project and a number of, people looking into wrongly convicted people, whether, they end up on the death penalty or not, that there's this element of uncertainty there's specific cases, like you were mentioning, which I agree with you on that too, that you go, oh my God, yes, please take this person away. But then if you look at it broadly, there's enough people that could be wrongly convicted. So I think to balance that out, like how could you take one innocent person's life? That would be wrong too. Innocent person who's on death penalty, who had been convicted wrongly. So I don't know. I think you have to look at that too. Could it be somebody that's innocent?
What you just said reminds me of the quote, it's better to let 10 guilty people go than to kill one innocent person.
Yeah. It's tough. I wrestle with it too, because those type of crimes, you go, oh my God, one can do without them.
From the victim's standpoint, I also wrestle with it as well, because when they go to court thinking this is the person that did it, and even in some of the instances that they've been exonerated, those families are like, this is wrong. This is the person that did it. They are not. They have gotten their satisfaction from believing this person is the representation of whatever type of evil or wrong. And it puts them back into a vulnerable situation, like who did it? And now I have to feel guilty because this other person was responsible for the crime. So it's a big conundrum.
So I'm just going to throw some data in real quick. So there have been studies, and they pretty much proven about at least 4% of people on death row are actually innocent, and that unfortunately that's another area where it's your socioeconomic group, and if you're black and brown, you're more likely to end up on death row. So I have a question for you guys. Have you ever gone to serve on a jury and they ask you about the death penalty? Because the way it happens now, if it's a case that's eligible for the death sentence, death penalty, they ask the jurors up front, And basically, everybody on that jury is pro death penalty. So there's no kind of dissension or, so in general, I saw somebody shake their head that they don't do jury duty. But in general, has anybody here ever been on a death penalty?
No.
Is that why you don't want to do it?
Every time, I dread seeing that summons for one.
Because of that, I bet.
And I found out it was because they picked from the voter rolls and the driver's licenses. I was so tempted not to vote.
That's why I never get called up. I don't have a driver's
I
license.
get called out like clockwork.
I never ever get
Every
called.
time I've been summoned, and I've been on a jury once, it's for a criminal case. And the first time I was summoned, it was for, I don't know how many native Philadelphians are here, but it was for the Lex Street murders. And I was just like, I can't be on this jury. I was not picked for that, but I was picked for another high profile.
Wait. Can you explain what the Lex Street murders are prior to
I didn't get the full extent of it because part of that time I was in college, but apparently, I guess it was January 1st of some year that I was in college. There was a drug house and they killed execution style at least 10 people in the house.
Ooh.
And I think there was more people there. A few survived, but they had, and the one I was summoned for, they had 3 defendants. And as soon as they said it was the Lex Street murder, all of the jury gasped, so all of us were excused. They had a hard time finding jurors for
That's the
that.
trick.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
When it comes to the death penalty, my personal belief is that it is because of African Americans, let's say, disproportionately put on that for 2 years. I have to say no at this point. And it's really a hard thing because when you know someone has actually done it. I mean, this is like, and I don't want to open a can of worms here with OJ. I looked at the evidence. I'm saying that's circumstantial, but it's not actually somebody placing the point that he actually murdered those people. So you have cases like that where you just don't know. In that case, I'd say put him in jail. Number 2, when you were talking about the issue with all the appeals and everything, you think about all the money that's spent trying to put somebody to death. You want to just say, hey, you have life. Because at that point, it's cheaper. And I've never been to prison, and hopefully never will be. But I don't think the conditions there are very conducive to having a good life. So
Yeah.
I think at that point, they're living a hard life for the next 30, 40 years. So I say, get rid of the death penalty, give them life, because the American citizens are paying my taxes. So I'd rather just say, hey, let's lower the cost. But get to the bottom line. It's cheaper to just keep them for 30, 20 years, let them die in prison, than keep going through all these appeals, which I think Larry Krasner actually, $2 billion or $1 billion, something like that. And all the money that's spent to keep people alive through all the appeals. So we can put that $1 billion or $2 billion.
Lawyers are
put it somewhere else. Right?
Lawyers are happy.
So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah. One of the things about the death penalty in Pennsylvania is since it was reinstituted in the mid-70s, the 3 people who actually were executed all asked to be, they said they didn't want to go through any more appeals. So a death sentence in Pennsylvania right now is really life without parole. So, it's we as citizens, wherever we fall on the scale, anybody who actually gets that conviction probably will not be executed. So, it's just like if you do fall on the pro side, that maybe people feel good that they have that person who's been convicted has that looming over their heads. But from a taxpayer's point of view, it's probably never going to happen, and we're spending a whole lot of money trying to, I think you used the word, I can't remember the word that you used about, it's kind of like, it's symbolism more than it's actual
Like an actual
Actually,
sentence.
yes,
Yeah.
Unless you're in Texas.
Well, we're talking about Pennsylvania, we have to deal with November 7th.
I have a question for you, Allison. When speaking of the death penalty, do you find with victims, what do you hear from victims?
So there's another organization, Anti-Violence Partnership, that has families of murder victims. It's one of their programs, and so they're the organization that has the most contact with co-victims of homicide. I can't really comment on that in any kind of substantial way, but I can say, sort of again going back to some of the data, is I think that what's hard about a system of appeals that are endless is that really what many victims want is information. And as long as there's an appeal, there will not be any actual record or questions answered about what happened, why it happened, where there was a body in those victims, all of the sort of details and things that are so wanting, I think, for families. None of that when you have a system where there's someone even once they're convicted, there's appeal. They can't say, this is what happened, or this is because there's an appeal. So they're going to do in their own case if they do that. So I think that some of that sort of truth telling that families want. So I can say that much, and that I think is hard.
Do you see family members though actually wanting the death penalty?
Sure, and we see family members who want to forgive the person. So, victims are as complicated and as diverse and as traumatized as, what the Crime Victims Act says is that victims have the right to input. That does not mean that they have the right to be the decider, right? But victims are dehumanized in this process also. It is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus the defendant. The victim is just a witness. So it's not a process that really allows for anybody to be fully human. Everyone's in this game. And the only time that a victim's voice is even put into things is they have a right to make a victim impact statement. But technically, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a social worker, but I think that's not actually supposed to impact sentencing. But one of the things that one of my asks for whoever the new DA is that we really keep some data on what does victim impact look like? If the data nationally is backed up by victims' responses in Philly, are people being asked before there's a plea? Are victim witnesses being asked what they would want? Because again, if the data in Philly is similar, it would indicate that people would want more diversionary programs. They would want less incarceration. They would want more restorative justice options. So if they're making a plea agreement, because that's cheaper than a trial, right? So that's the motivation to have a plea agreement. It's cheaper. And victims aren't even asked, which we know that they're not asked at the rate of their existence, right? But then that actually might even work to reduce mass incarceration as well. I think there's this belief that if victims' voices are put in, that it's going to be bigger sentences, and it's unfair, it's going to bias, but actually it doesn't seem like that's what, it doesn't seem like that might be true.
I have a question regarding what you said a while ago regarding immigrant communities. When you go and reach out to them, do you find that they're registered to vote? Or do you think they're just so isolated from the political system? I think one way to incentivize our government to actually care about these folks, and not just immigrant communities, but African Americans, Hispanic communities, is to get these people to hold our politicians accountable at the voting booth. And to hold our politicians' feet to the fire and say, if you don't act on these things, we're going to kick you out. You better start listening, because we've been ignored for a long time.
A huge, as you know, the immigrant communities, at least in South Philly, are so diverse, right? So there's so many different communities. In terms of voting, a huge percentage of our clients are undocumented, so they're not going to be able to vote.
Yeah.
I think that the only way that sort of their presence can impact government is things like the census data, which can say actually people are here and so dollars should come here. And I know that, the Office of Immigrant Affairs did do a huge push to get people documented and undocumented to be counted. But yeah, there are incentives to participate in the criminal justice process if you're undocumented. There are visas that are available to people, new visas in particular, that a lot of our clients are, and cooperation with prosecution is one of the requirements. So,
Okay.
Can't vote, and I don't.
Yeah, my own thing is I want to change it to something so little. When you go back to police, and this is one of the reasons that I've gotten involved in the DA's race. In the recent case, we have a gentleman called David Jones. He was a victim of being shot in the back by an officer. And under normal circumstances, it would have been washed under the rug, swept under the rug, and nobody would have done anything. We've actually had citizen activists that rose up and say, hold it, how do you shoot somebody in the back and there's no repercussion? And once that investigation started along the road, when the police commissioner said, oh, it causes me pause, and then 3 months later we say, okay, I'm going to suspend him with the intent to dismiss him in 30 days. And we're saying, okay, what is happening here? Now, in normal circumstances over the years, we've had that happen. This is not the first time this person has shot somebody in the back. Okay, the first time he shot him, he paralyzed the person. Okay, we've had other numerous cases in this city, whereas the person is maybe suspended, goes before the DA, and what happens is we have this secret grand jury, and we know that whatever the DA wants to do in the grand jury, whatever outcome he wants to get. And we've had the history where the officer gets off. And this is important because we need a DA to understand that. When I looked at the two candidates, I looked at Beth Grossman from the Republican side. I looked at Larry Krasner on the Democratic side. And I'm saying, okay, what do you want to do? Are you going to say, I'm for justice, and we're going to actually look at this, and maybe we might have to bump this up to the state level, and am I going to make some kind of changes in my office that would actually bring justice to people in criminal cases? And this is one of the things that we looked at and said, okay, on a city level, we can do that with DA. But also we need to work with